Hello everyone, and welcome to the LeveragePoint webinar. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ed Arnold, and I'm Vice President of Products here at LeveragePoint. I'd like to welcome you all to another one of our monthly webinars of thought leadership in value-based strategy. Sponsored by LeveragePoint. LeveragePoint provides the only software solution for value-based pricing. We offer a cloud-based collaboration platform that supports product innovation as well as sales enablement that changes the way companies create, communicate, and capture value. Find out more about us from our website, leveragepoint.com. Please note that during the webinar presentation, you are welcome to ask questions at any time by typing them into the right-hand panel within the questions section. And at the conclusion of our presentation today, we'll do our best to answer all of them. Also, if you complete the brief online survey as you exit the webinar, you'll be eligible for the drawing for a copy of the ROI of Pricing book. So please take a moment to do that. Okay, so at this time, it's my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Kevin Mitchell, who's president of the Professional Pricing Society. Now, as some of you may know, PPS is the preeminent association dedicated to the field of pricing and provides training, certification, and networking worldwide and online as well. Kevin is also publisher of the Pricing Advisor newsletter and the Journal of Professional Pricing. He's a frequent speaker at pricing conferences and events in North America and Europe. Before joining PPS in 2007, he worked for 11 years in various financial management roles at Colgate-Palmolive and General Electric. So naturally, we're really excited to have Kevin with us today. I think it's fair to say that he probably knows everybody who is somebody in the pricing world. So with that, Kevin, welcome.
Thank you very much, Ed, and thank you for the nice introduction, and I'm honored to be a part of the webinar here today. We here at the Professional Pricing Society at PPS have had a long partnership with Ed and the team from LeveragePoint, and so I want to thank you and your team for your partnership, and also let everyone know that I'm very excited to speak with you here today. What I'm going to be talking about is a few things. First of all, I would like to do a very quick introduction and give some background information about my organization, about the Professional Pricing Society. And also I'm going to talk briefly about what some leading companies are doing in order to achieve excellence within the pricing discipline. Also, I will discuss briefly about some building blocks that you and your company can use to achieve pricing excellence and to become better at pricing and at delivering the margins and profitability that your corporation desires. And of course, I will end with some time for questions and answers. First of all, a quick introduction about the Professional Pricing Society. PPS is the professional member organization for the pricing discipline, and we have a 30-year history. We were started by a pricing practitioner back in the Stone Age before pricing was cool, and we are honored to be the organization for those of us who do pricing as our careers and those of us who are connected to pricing, be they through other departments such as sales or marketing or finance. But we are the organization at the home and at the nexus of everything for pricing. We have almost 5,000 members worldwide, and now we are very pleased that we do annual conferences on 4 continents. Our next events for the remainder of 2014 will be our American Fall Conference, which will be October 21st through 24th in Las Vegas. And we also have our 10th annual European Conference, which will be held in Barcelona, Spain from the 26th to the 28th of November this year. If you want more information on PPS conferences, you can certainly give me a call or send an email or check out our website at pricingsociety.com. In addition to our annual events, we also do more than 35 workshops per year in person, and we have about 30 online pricing courses. And these courses cover various topics within pricing and related fields, be they from core pricing skills all the way through advanced analytical methods to negotiation and change management strategies, and to dealing with customers and also compatriots, be they inside or outside of the company. And PPS also does publications. We do 16 publications per year. We also do webinars on various pricing topics. And of course, we are the networking forum electronically and in person for the pricing discipline. It's 2014, and I've heard that everyone has a mission statement. PPS's mission statement, very simply, is to nurture a growing community of pricing professionals, and we stay committed to independently disseminating pricing expertise throughout the business world. And now I would like to talk about some things that leading organizations are doing to exceed their expectations within pricing and within margin and profitability and achieving the results that they are looking for. First of all, I think the most important thing that leading enterprises do is the first step, I believe, is always to connect and to get buy-in from other departments. Of course, if your C-level, if your senior management is on board, then it's a lot easier for pricing knowledge and pricing strategies and strategic initiatives and so on and so forth to come from the top and to filter down through an organization than to go the other way. But in addition to leadership from the top, also leading enterprises now are showing great connections and great buy-in from other departments, be they the sales department, which is where rubber meets the road, the marketing and finance departments, other strategic leaders. They can be in operations or in other related fields. But one thing that we are seeing primarily is that in order to be a leading organization within pricing, everyone essentially has to be on the same train and has to be on board and moving in the same direction. So if all departments from the top all the way down through the organization are on board with a pricing message, be it a strong value-based pricing message or strong analytics or using guidance from data in order to foster strategic pricing initiatives, but I believe that our first step there is to have everyone on board and moving in the same direction there. So what exactly does this mean? Of course, if chief level or senior management led strategic initiatives are part of your organization, then those are often the most effective. If senior managers place a particular importance on something and follow through on that, then typically these are things that get done and get done well. If they are measured and managed effectively there, then that is a very strong way to see improvements throughout strategic initiatives throughout the corporation. In an ideal situation, sales compensation would be connected to pricing goals or to margin goals or to profitability goals instead of just being pure volume targets. If there is a connection with pricing goals within how sales groups are compensated, then that fosters a more closely working relationship and partnership between the sales departments and other related fields that can help the organization achieve and get excellence there. And of course, if you are a pricing person, you know the old adage that pricing touches everything and everything should touch pricing. Pricing should be at the center of a lot of strategic initiatives, and basically pricing is a field where there is a lot of control and a lot of interest in the entire P&L statement, perhaps with less so on the cost side. But as far as gaining revenues and having those translate into higher margins and profits, in an excellent, ideal situation, a lot of companies are having pricing kind of at the nexus of a few different groups there. Of course, this can develop certain stresses, and the companies who are achieving pricing excellence like to have this stress be delivered in a more positive or constructive way instead of a negative way, us versus them, pricing versus what finance says, pricing versus what sales would say. What we would like to see and what companies who are becoming excellent in pricing are doing is having a more positive, constructive negotiation feedback instead of a more negative kind of counterproductive approach there. So a few ways that pricing can help the sales department. One is your sales department probably wants information quickly so that they can get money in their pockets. If you can reduce time for getting quotes to customers, if you can raise sales confidence versus the inevitable price pressures, and if you can provide market information or information beyond a particular salesperson's territory or customer base, then those are great ways that pricing can help the sales department and foster a stronger relationship and a stronger teamwork element there. Some other things that leading enterprises are doing is that they are fully utilizing a culture of value-based pricing and leading to optimization. And by culture, what we mean is, I steal a definition from Shine, who I believe was a professor at MIT. And culture, basically a shared basic assumption that groups learn as they solve problems, valid and taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel. Basically, when value pricing becomes a culture within a company, then it becomes innate. It becomes something that new members of the organization learn organically or via osmosis, and it also almost becomes an instinct. So there are certain corporations where artifacts and espoused values and basic assumptions are always built around a culture of value. So another way to achieve pricing excellence there. One example, and this is from a company called Simon Kucher and Partners, but there was a study where they looked at some automotive suppliers. So looking at a business-to-business group, people who supplied auto parts to the large auto manufacturers, be they BMW, Toyota, Mercedes, and so on and so forth. And they looked at some benchmarks on pricing approaches and the relationship therein with their pricing power. One of the things that we saw there through this study is that when you go from cost plus to a more value-based pricing initiative or a thought process there, then the results are very strong, and stronger results come as a part of that. And I'm trying to go forward to the next slide, and it's not going. I don't know if I've temporarily lost control there. But, oh, thank you very much. Value-based suppliers, much more likely to be successful, are able to get higher prices and higher margins on average, and where unsuccessful suppliers focused a lot of their energy on reducing costs, the more successful suppliers basically split cost improvements and were able to get more in price realization. So since they were able to place more of a value on what they provided to their customers instead of just looking at being a low-cost producer or focusing on the cost side. The result of the study is that techniques that lead toward value instead of just focusing on a pure cost-plus basis, very powerful for business-to-business, also for business-to-consumer examples there. But the companies who focused on value were much more likely to realize price gains there. Another thing that leading enterprises are doing is that they are fully implementing software tools, external tools, some internal tools, along with market research and their systems to kind of get a combined approach going forward there. So if all of the tools are used correctly and are used completely in one package, what we are seeing and what PPS member companies are stating is that they are basically taking a combined approach with several tools be they analytical tools, optimization tools, market research tools, and using all of these together in a few different ways to basically improve their pricing performance. They use market research for understanding what their customer wants and what their customer needs, and often the result of well done and effective market research is some of the product capabilities that you thought were important. Sometimes your customers place a lower value on those, and some things that are kind of afterthoughts for your products, or internally what you think about your products and services. There are some so-called afterthoughts that are very important to your customers. And so that information, of course, has to be taken into account. Another great tool, various analytical methods, be they win-loss analysis, various elasticities, price waterfalls, and scatter plots there. And some of those are very basic, but that does not stop them from being very useful. So some of the analytical methods there, as part of pricing excellence, you need to understand what is going on from a customer standpoint, and also internally what's going on with your pricing there. What do changes in your pricing up and down mean to your volume and to your margins? And where are the leaks in a waterfall if they exist? And also, how is the consistency across your organization as seen through a scatter plot? Leading companies also use their databases and their internal and external systems in order to segment their databases, in order to segment their customers. And this, of course, leads to ways that you can further your pricing knowledge and, again, get closer to the value goals that your company should have by segmenting groups and by basically pricing to the strengths within your organization by looking at particular customer segments or geographical segments or industry segments or various ways there. And another way that companies are achieving pricing excellence is through the use of pricing software. Big data leading to guidance, and I know that a lot of us have heard some of the incredible information that's out there about how much we're producing data. I heard the other day that more data in terabytes, or however you measure data now, has been created in the last 18 months than in the whole of human history up until 2012. So basically, since about the beginning of 2013, we've created as much data as every human being on the planet ever did up through 2012. So the data's out there. It's up to you and your team to use it, gather it, analyze it, and have it provide strategic guidance for your organization. And of course, as a subset of that, value pricing and value proposition software. It could be software as a service, ideally something cloud-based and effective there, is another great way to attack that opportunity, to try to battle some of the issues that are out there as far as the amount of data that is available and how you can use that in order to provide guidance for your company moving forward. One other thing that companies are doing is, of course, training and motivating pricing managers. And through this, we see those of you who are pricing managers, who have pricing teams, who work for you. Pricing is a rather difficult job right now. Your pricing department doesn't have a choice on whether they want to be artists or scientists. They have to be both. They have to be they have to be the authors of change management and negotiation throughout their companies. And in a lot of cases, they have to manage up very well and manage sideways or external to their departments very well also. You have to speak several different languages as a pricing department, since you have connections to everyone. And if you are in the middle of it, you have to talk to people on their own terms. So from a pricing perspective, think of a particular issue that you might have and think of addressing it with a brand new finance MBA versus a career salesperson. The data could be there, the analysis could be there, But if you address those two individuals in the same way, it might not get the same message across. Your career salesperson wants to continue to be competitive and wants to achieve and wants to have dollars in his or her pocket come the next quarterly bonus cycle. Your brand new finance MBA might want all of the analysis and might want Greek letters and numbers and graphs. And as a pricing professional, you have to do both. It could be qualitative or quantitative, but you'd have to address different people in different ways and speak to them in a language that they can understand. Of course, within this, cross-functional skill sets are required, and particularly at Professional Pricing Society, we feel that we have lots of opportunities to increase your pricing knowledge there. But it's very, very important to get a well-trained and hopefully very well-compensated pricing department, which is, of course, a great investment for the long term for the company. This is an example that I borrowed from an individual named Paul Hunt, who is no stranger to those of us who have been in the pricing discipline for a while. And he talks about the pricing process maturity model, and he has 5 levels that basically starts with an ad hoc level where you can see a small scatter plot there, no rhyme or reason. People who negotiate get great prices, people who don't may not. The volume or how good a customer is, it really doesn't matter in that scenario. And this progresses through his second level, which shows a waterfall there with some pricing controls, and at least you know some things that are going on and probably have some rules in place. And again, the next level up he has there is the third level, which shows a value versus price kind of diagram, and so at least you have a value-based mind frame going through the organization. Situations where you provide more value, you capture that value and make sure that your company and your salespeople and yourself and everyone who works for your organization is rewarded for the value that they provide there. And the higher levels are where pricing optimization comes into effect, as seen by the parabola there with the local high, where you can try to predict a range of prices where you could be optimized or near optimized. And of course, Paul Hunt's 5th level, mastery across all of the organizations there, which shows everything below that, but also shows a level of mastery where it's been done year after year, and again, kind of going back to the culture and the SHINE's definition where it becomes innate and inherent within the organization. So the pricing process maturity model, again, at level 1, you're putting out fires. At level 2, there are at least some rules that you can police. And it goes up through being a partner, being a scientist, and finally being a maestro where everything is mastered there. So an example there. And now I'd like to talk about some best practices and some building blocks that some PPS companies are used in order to attain and achieve pricing excellence. The first, of course, is looking at the functional skills. And this could be through human resources departments, through various qualitative methods, through pricing councils, and other ways there. Some ways to develop functional skills. We are very lucky, those of us in the pricing discipline right now, because even though pricing is a very challenging career path, there is a golden age of pricing literature that are out there. There right now are lots of great books that are out about pricing. There's also lots of information going on via social media through pricing expertise groups, and a lot of electronic information out there also through webinars such as this one, and also through scientific white papers, publications that my organization and others do for, by, and about pricing people. Another way to develop functional skills is pricing people have to become more external. You certainly cannot be siloed. Internally within your pricing department, you have to get out and make visits with sales teams if your company allows or hopefully encourages that, in order to see the pressures that your sales departments face and to see the objections that come about and see how your sales department battles those objections. Internal training, external training, there are a lot of good options that are available via the web now also. And also, another great way to develop cross-functional skills is just to be cross-departmental yourself. Mentors in other departments, rotation so you can see what's going on in marketing or finance or product management or sales, but lots of various ways to increase your skill set and to get external there. Another pillar or another good building block would be looking at systems and capabilities, key performance indicators, and determining where and how companies can improve. Basically taking a jumble of ideas and having them filtered and connected into one stream of thought there. So key ingredients for strategy, again, from Hunt from a few years ago, he mentioned cost, customer competition, and capacity. Another way to look at things is look at an industry level key performance indicator versus product market versus transactional execution, but looking at your systems and your capabilities that way. Ideally, of course, key performance indicators, forward-looking with an external focus, and again, looking at the cultural change where a value-based mindset becomes innate and inherent in the organization. Of course, a big part of this would be the support diagnostics and looking at consistent approaches and ways to overcome obstacles there. For an example, it might be something as basic as a scatter chart here. I know that a lot of us have seen things like this. Hopefully they have a little bit more rhyme or reason than this one does, but a nice basic way that you can show what's going on, just looking at prices by customer volume, or very, very basically looking at how prices react or how price changes affect quantities demanded, looking at whether or not there is an inelastic situation or a more elastic situation, looking at change in price versus change in quantity there. And of course, all of this kind of wraps up again where the rubber would meet the road would be in delivering the results, looking at strategic pricing initiatives, and looking at investments that are hopefully repaid when looking at specific pricing moves and delivering the results there. One good example, and this was an example from Simon Kucher and Partners, talked about dimensions of a systematic price increase process. And their 3 steps very basically were look at configuring your strategy. Who are your targets? Who are your segments? Where are your elasticities more elastic versus inelastic? Take all of that information in order to configure a strategy. And that would lead, of course, to preparing the organization. This could be through, from a top line, sales incentives, monitoring key performance indicators in order to lead more to that value-based culture approach. And then finally, their 3rd step was an effective rollout where you had support from hopefully the top level and from sales and from other departments there, along with good communication on what was going on throughout the process. So for a quick 3-step roadmap on how to look at a strategic price increase or a pricing initiative, this was a good example courtesy of Simon Kucher and Partners there on their recommendations. One quick and easy example, and this was from a gentleman named Stefan Liozu, who is another individual who is a great friend to those of us within pricing. He was a former chief executive officer of a building products company, and he told his pricing department, I want to see on one slide something that's so simple even a CEO could understand it. So with his department, he gave them their ultimate goal is to have a monthly corporate pricing council, and they were going to look at a few key performance indicators. No numbers, no graphs, a straight green light, yellow light, red light. How are we doing on average sales price or historical trends or capturing value or a pocket price? So one very nice, quick, and easy example of a pillar where you can manage up and manage down and show a senior manager or ideally a CEO or someone C-level or a vice president, basically what's going on within the pricing department, within your organization, and look for ways to act on that and improve on that for later. And finally, I want to bring up one thing. PPS has done surveys of the pricing discipline for over a decade now. And for our past several surveys, we have always asked about job satisfaction. Basically, we ask pricers to rate their jobs on a 1 to 10 scale, but we also look at what type of software or whether or not they use software for their pricing management. And in our last survey, this was done in December 2013. We'll have another survey coming up in a couple months. But in our most recent survey from about 9 months ago, we showed a very clear statistical correlation between those who use a specific pricing software. Internal or external pricing software had a correlation with the highest job satisfaction, closely followed by an internally developed software. And interestingly enough, not using a software or going with a gut approach or going with management acumen or not using a specific tool for pricing there was rated significantly lower than those who use a specific software. And furtherly interesting, looking down the hallway there, those who used Excel rated their job satisfaction and their job performance actually the lowest amongst the 4 groups there. So one final thought to think of regarding the use of pricing software and how it affects job satisfaction and performance. At Professional Pricing Society, at our meetings, there's always the point that there are people, be they in procurement or purchasing or somewhere in the supply chain, and they've had specific and very concentrated and very explicit software packages for decades. They're further down the learning curve than those of us on the pricing side are. So we are very encouraging of pricing people to increase your skill sets, but also increase your tool sets there by at least considering external or nice internal developed packages in order to elevate your pricing performance there. And our data does show that people report higher job satisfaction and better job performance when there is software in place. Of course, my statistics professors would say that you can certainly say that that's a correlation, not a causation, but there may be a few things that go together there. But our data does show those who have specific pricing software tend to say that they are happier in their jobs and perform better in their jobs. So with that, I want to give a special thanks to Peyton, Ed, and Paul, and the team from LeveragePoint for letting me speak with you today. For other questions about PPS, you can certainly contact me at the methods there via our website or email or phone there. And I hope to talk to all of you again very soon. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin. That was a terrific presentation. I appreciate you spending time with us today. We do have some time for questions, and a few questions have already come in during the webinar. And by the way, there's still some time to put your question on the list if you'd like. But before we get to them, I'd like to introduce LeveragePoint's Chief Executive Officer, Peyton Marshall, who'd like to share a few thoughts about the Professional Pricing Society. Peyton?
Thanks, Ed, and thank you, Kevin. At LeveragePoint, we strongly believe that building pricing capabilities in an organization improves business performance. A recent white paper by Tom Nagel highlights the way that pricing excellence can drive profit growth and enhance customer value. If you haven't read his paper, please download it at the LeveragePoint website. As organizations build and sustain pricing excellence, the Professional Pricing Society plays a central role, supporting pricing as a discipline, enhancing the knowledge and productivity of pricing professionals, and training pricing teams through CPP certification. Let's look more closely at the value an organization can realize by building pricing capabilities and by leveraging the benefits of PPS. What you see here is a value proposition in the cloud. It quantifies the value of building pricing capabilities in a B2B organization. The graph shows that over 5 years, $27.8 million in value is created by better pricing execution. Net of the $5 million outlay over time that it costs to build and sustain the pricing organization, this creates value to the B2B organization of $22.8 million over 5 years. That's an ROI of over 450%. Some key assumptions are shown here as well. The value proposition that you see is for a manufacturing division with $40 million of operating profit. They're starting a 5-person pricing department. Stefan Liozu and Andreas Hinterhuber's ROI of pricing book highlights the improvement in pricing execution possible from implementing a pricing program like this. Here we've used a conservative estimate of a 2% price execution improvement based on numbers highlighted in their book. Finally, you can see the impact of this pricing program over time. Even with a $2 million cost of traditional premise software that takes a year to install, payback occurs in 1 year and 4 months. This value proposition can be adapted and customized for company specifics. Suppose your organization has a $25 million operating profit. And suppose you have a pricing organization of 3 instead of 5. Still a 350% ROI with a similar payback period. It doesn't necessarily take a year to get results. With technology improvements, you can build pricing capabilities faster using cloud software. Here you see the same $40 million division getting fast adoption in the cloud with reduced upfronts. This raises the value created for the organization, gets to break even almost immediately, and increases the ROI to over 800%. In building and sustaining an effective pricing organization, the value created by the Professional Pricing Society is substantial. PPS benefits include networking, education, and the ability to share best practices with your colleagues at PPS conferences. At PPS, it's all about collaboration. Collaboration between pricing and launch teams, collaboration between pricing and sales, collaboration with your colleagues at PPS. In this, our next value proposition, we focus on the value of obtaining certified professional pricing training for a pricing organization. Here you can see the value of getting CPP certification for a 5-person department in that same $40 million division. Based on survey data, we've made a reasonable estimate that a pricing department's productivity improves 5% by getting CPP certification for the department. That's 5% of the 2% conservative estimate of the pricing program overall. The cost of the CPP program to the company is included in the value proposition, and even taking into account a likely compensation increase for CPP graduates, the net value of CPP certification on its own is on the order of $311,000 per year. The result is an ROI on CPP certification for the company of over 850% per year. Another graphic way to look at this is to look at opportunity cost. There is a $348,000 a year opportunity cost for this organization if it doesn't get CPP certification. Pricing professionals are doing important work, and PPS is doing a great job supporting them. We're grateful to Kevin for being here today. LeveragePoint believes that PPS can add real value to your organization. Ed?
Thank you, Peyton. Okay, so a few questions have come in, Kevin, so hope you're ready for some good questions.
Okay.
And I'll answer the first one because we get this one all the time. Will there be copies of the slides made available? And the answer is yes. We will send those out to all participants, as well as a link to the recording of this webinar. And by the way, you can find recordings from our previous webinars also from the LeveragePoint website as well as our YouTube channel. Okay, so let's look at some of the new questions here. One of these questions relates to one of your earlier points, Kevin, about raising sales confidence. And the question is, some additional thoughts about raising confidence and also the relationship of compensation as well for salespeople.
Well, with the raising confidence, to address the first part of that, I would say that your salespeople, when they make a presentation, if the person they're presenting to doesn't say anything or tends to hem and haw for a little while, in a lot of situations, your sales team will register that as a price issue right off the bat. It's kind of a thought that when a salesperson makes a deal, it's due to great salesmanship. When a salesperson unfortunately loses a deal, it's because the price is too high. Of course, in some cases that is the exact reason why, but every case is not like that. There are some cases where a salesperson may perceive basically a price withdrawal or a price question when there isn't one, and I think that's a situation where, with knowledge of what's going on from a macro perspective, from a market-wide or economy-wide perspective, a very involved, very knowledgeable, very analytical pricing person might be able to help with some influence there to let them know that although this seems like a price negotiation or a pure price buyer, what might be going on could be something that's going on from a competitive standpoint, or an example where our market research so that this type of customer wants this type of benefit instead of a different type of benefit, but there's some ways to battle that there. And I think the second part of the question was regarding sales compensation. And of course, we like to think of salespeople as a big coin-operated machine that goes out there and wins deals, and in a lot of cases that's true also. If there is a situation where your salespeople are compensated partially based on margins or partially based on targets that kind of relate down to profitability instead of more to volume only, then it can certainly be easier to foster a good relationship there. And if there is a situation where, as a pricing professional, you can give them background information and give them the knowledge that will help get money in their pocket, then I think salespeople across the board would be 100% on board with that. Where it can get a little tricky is where sales compensation is purely or mostly based on volume, on getting units, however they're measured within your company, out the door, with little or no regard to the prices that are gathered in order to get those units out the door, then of course that can be a slightly trickier situation. That's a situation where your salesperson, the first instinct might be to always drop the price if he or she thinks that a deal might be lost, before there's an objection even raised. And situations like that, although tricky, you can also provide guidance there, and by looking at certain deals that the salesperson has done where there was a more value gotten, or where there was a better price or a more fair price for the company that was gathered for a certain deal versus another deal. So it could be something as simple as looking at a scatter plot of that salesperson's deals, or maybe a comparison with a comparable individual that shows he or she is getting similar deals but is basically capitalizing more on the value that the company provides in order to get a fair price for the company. That may have been an overly long answer to the question, but hope I addressed both parts there.
A very, very good answer. Okay, so another question is about, and I'll just read it. What's the best way for a B2B company to organize transactional pricing? That seems like a big question. So any thoughts about companies with transactional pricing?
Let's see. On that one, there are a few different schools of thought, and on that one might have to refer to some of the expertise and some of the surveys that are out there. I think on that one it might depend a little bit on organization's goals and structures and what the aims are for the organization there, but it's probably a little too broad to say that the answer is simply A, B, or C there. So I don't know if I can help directly on that one. I would need to know a little more information on that one.
Yeah. No, fair enough, and maybe we can get a clarifying question in response. All right. Okay, some more sort of specific questions about PPS. One about, I believe it's probably referring to your last slide in your survey. There was questions about some details about that survey, such as the number of participants and which countries that took place.
Okay. For the number of survey responses, we have, for our surveys, it's usually a small four-digit number, I'm sorry. So our big surveys are usually over 1,000 people to get the results there. And as far as the companies or the demographics of where people come, PPS is an American company, of course, and most of our membership is in North America, probably about, I would say, somewhere in the 60s as a percentage. So let's say a little less than 2/3 of those respondents would be North American. The largest group outside of North America would be Europe, primarily Western and Northern Europe, on the size of probably somewhere in the upper teens as a percentage, let's say 16 to 18%. And then we have smaller groups in other geographies where we also do conferences in Latin America and Asia, probably around 5% each, and the rest spread out through Africa, Middle East, Australia, and elsewhere. But vast majority would be North American, and the nearest big plurality would be in Europe, mainly Western and Northern Europe.
Okay. There's another question about the pricing certification that PPS offers. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about, how does one become certified? There's also some questions about what that costs and what's required to get it.
Okay, certainly. PPS certification, the Certified Pricing Professional, was a program that was developed in partnership with 3 business schools here in the United States. And basically is a 2-stage process in order to become certified. And that is, the first stage is to attain 6 credits, which can be gotten through workshops, either in person or online, on various methods. And we have over 30 workshops offered in person every year, and we also have an online bank of about 30 that are available full-time, 24/7 also. So there are lots of choices there. And so the first stage is to get expertise in 6 different areas through 6 different workshops there. The second stage of the Certified Pricing Professional involves extra reading materials, extra study guides, a chronological study group, questions with an academic advisor if you would like, and all of that is done in order to prepare to take the Certified Pricing Professional final exam, which is a 3 to 4 hour exam that covers 14 modules within pricing. These could be competition, negotiating, analytical skills, international pricing, and so on and so forth. And basically, by showing expertise in those areas and passing the test, you attain the certified pricing professional through those two stages. As far as the costs, there are a few different packages available. The simplest way might be to describe it for a team of 4. If you choose to do an online-only version of the certified pricing professional, then for PPS members, it's about $11,000. If you have a team of 4 and you decide to combine an online certified pricing professional along with conferences and events in person that offer the advantage of face-to-face networking and connections that way, then the prices are a range from about $4,000 to $5,000 each per individual, or for a team of 4, typically it is around $15,000 there.
All right. Thank you, Kevin, and I'm sure there'll be some interested folks in getting some certification as a result of this webinar, and they can find more information about it on the PPS website, I'm sure. Right, Kevin?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, so here's another more strategic question: is how do you apply value-based pricing to so-called commodity products?
Very good question. Even with so-called commodity products, there are always elements where a company can install or provide slightly more value to a customer. Even if it's a commodity, then it could be involved with delivery methods or service after the sale, or something as similar as the familiarity of dealing with a certain group or a certain way, or dealing with people that you know and that can rely on. There are always, sometimes small, sometimes subtle, but there are always ways to essentially go beyond having a pure commodity product there. One thing that is very important when dealing with commodities is looking at things from your customer's perspective. A commodity delivered when your customer does not want, or that causes them to do extra work or involves extra cost, is not as strong as the same commodity that's delivered when they wanted, how they wanted, in a method that they wanted, by people that they're used to dealing with, people that they can rely on, and so on and so forth. So I think a great way of dealing with commodity products and yet having a value-based pricing mind frame is to look at ways that your company can provide value beyond the tons or units of the actual commodity product that are delivered, into ways that you can kind of go above the baseline there by just having steel or a chemical or something like that delivered. And usually most organizations can find ways or have customer groups where, even though they have commodities, they can provide a little bit more value and then work with their customers to further replicate that value and become even more valuable, in order to hopefully get some of that value back as far as a fairer price for the company.
Yeah, great answer, and I always love this question. It's actually a very timely question, because we're going to be doing a webinar in November with George Creston about this, and one of the things he said was, well, you may have a commodity product, but you never have a commodity offer. And I think that was such a great line, and I think it sort of summarizes a lot of things that you said, Kevin, that we at LeveragePoint have worked with a lot of companies that sell value offers on a commodity products, doing exactly the types of things that you outlined. So for more information about that, we have a great webinar coming up in November to talk about that.
Yeah, I like George's answer much better than mine on that one. And yeah, he's written a few books and a few very good papers in the area, so he's a great expert on questions like that.
Yeah, and there's a related question that came up, which I'll basically summarize is, A, if you do value-based pricing, doesn't that open the door for low-cost competition? And I have, I have a point of view on that, but Kevin, what are your thoughts about that?
Yes, it does. And I know that within the pricing discipline, we often think that value-based pricing always means higher prices. It most certainly does not. In some cases where there is, a bronze, silver, gold type of an option or a lesser option, then there could be a slightly lower value-based approach that might lead to sometimes a lower price there. But the question was, does purely using value-based pricing sometimes lead to low-cost producers? It certainly can, but then it's inherent on the organization to address that where needed, but also to continue to provide more and more value and to capitalize on that value in order to get a fairer deal. This is one where studies show that there's a certain, it's a smaller percentage than we think, but a certain percentage of corporate buyers are going to purely look at the lowest price deal, take it, no concern what happens after that. If you are a purely value-based organization, that's a hard group to reach. But the good news or bad news there is that even though that's a hard group to reach, it's also the lowest profitability amongst groups there. If someone wants to go bargain basement all the time with no concerns of what happens next, and you want to be a value-based provider, then that's one where you can win by losing deals like that somehow, and you can win by capitalizing on those who might value services that you provide or where you go above a baseline approach or above a low-cost approach. It's kind of tricky, and oftentimes we have a market share look at everything, and no one wants to lose a deal sometimes, but there are situations where if you are chasing market share and volume so much that it affects your profitability, such as trying to battle the lowest cost producer, even though you're thinking of a value-based approach, sometimes it's tough to get away from that, but it's one where oftentimes you can win by focusing on profitable deals instead of going after less profitable deals.
Okay, well, thank you, Kevin, for that. I'm just looking at the clock. I think we're used up our time and our hour, and I appreciate folks for staying on for that Q&A. Many people have stayed on, and for folks who will be exiting the webinar, please fill out that survey. You will get a chance to win that ROI pricing book, which is a real terrific book of different case studies and methodologies. I just want to give a quick program note about the upcoming webinars. So we do have a full schedule coming up in the next 6-8 weeks. Stefan Liaozu, who Kevin mentioned, is going to be doing a webinar on October 10th. And then the next week, a really great case study for ITB. This is a must-see, I think, for anybody who is trying to apply value-based pricing in the new product development arena. Some really good success stories there. So that's in October 15th. And then, as we just mentioned, George Cressman will be delivering our November 19th webinar about commodity products and value offers. So look for email announcements on that coming out shortly. And with that, I'd like to thank our presenter today, Kevin Mitchell. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much.
All right, and thanks again, everyone. Until next time.